Phil Maffa and the Clemson Tigers.
Welcome back to Hoopin' Helmets episode 3. Today we'll be going over week 9, recap of college football. We'll be going over the upcoming week, and then we'll talk college basketball because the season starts, believe it or not, on Monday. So let's quickly start with a recap of some of the week 9 games. Let's start on Friday night when Boise State headed to Vegas to play against UNLV. What did you see there, Lucas?
All right, so before we start here, if you guys want to see a little college basketball preview coming up because the season starts in 3 days, I'll be posting some shorts on the best recent March Madness buzzer beaters. It's a pretty hype video, so I suggest you guys watch. All right, so back to the recap from last week. We had UNLV play Boise State in a huge battle for the group of 5. It was a weird game because Ashton Jeanty, he was good. He still had 133 yards on the ground, but he wasn't as dominant as we're used to him seeing from him. But Boise State's quarterback played really well, so they ended up getting the win over UNLV. But it was closer than most people expected.
Yeah, totally. Boise State solidifying themselves as now them and Army. They're the top 2 group of 5 teams.
Yeah,
but Boise State's still ahead for now. That loss against Oregon doesn't sting them that bad. And then Notre Dame came to MetLife to play against Navy in kind of a weird game where Navy turned the ball over quite frequently, and then Notre Dame was just able to take control. And as we've seen against their weak schedule, they've been able to take control over a lot of teams, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, they've just played really no competition. So, of course, they're just going to win a lot of games. But, if Navy and Army are your toughest opponents, come on. And you lose to Northern Illinois, you shouldn't make the playoffs. But I'll admit, they've been playing great recently. So if they win out, I'd be fine with them making the playoffs. But they still got to get through Army. So who knows? And then USC, who's a good 4-4 team in the last game of the season. But last weekend, Navy just turned the ball over way too much to get the win. So it makes sense that there was a blowout.
Yeah, but you think 2-loss Notre Dame gets in the playoffs?
Definitely. I think it's possible, but, come on. If they get in the playoffs, that's just stupid. No way. They're not going to. No, 2-loss Notre Dame isn't making it. No.
I feel like they'll make it. But
No,
are they going to do anything?
No. They're not making it.
Okay. Let's move on to the next game we're recapping. And it was Nebraska, Ohio State. Lucas, you picked Nebraska. That ended up well for you. Nebraska fought for 3.5 quarters against Ohio State, I guess you could say. But at the end of the day, Ryan Day took care of business at home.
Yeah, they almost pulled out that W. I mean, they were really, really low yardage on the ground. Ohio State is 2 of the best running backs in the league, and they only rushed for 65 yards. Nebraska, that's crazy because they got dominated by Indiana the week before. So is Indiana maybe more legit than we thought? That's the real question that came out of this game, I think.
Yeah, Ohio State looked a little shaky, which I'm starting to question how good they are as now they play a good Penn State team. Your confidence pick of the week was Illinois. That did not end that well. Oregon, again, they're slowly but surely winning their games, and they continue to be, I think, the best team in the country.
Yeah, I'm a bit ashamed of that pick. I thought I was definitely going to get it right. But, I mean, it doesn't really matter considering that I'm still beating Brody by 11 right now. So, as long as he just keeps getting his confidence picks wrong, I'll be good. But getting to the game, Oregon, yeah, they're the number 1 team in the country right now. Although I do think Georgia, if they played head-to-head, I think Georgia would win. But Oregon is they're still a great football team, and Dylan Gabriel's looked really good.
Yeah, and then in the 3:30 window in the SEC, Missouri traveled to Tuscaloosa. And Alabama, they put Missouri away. But, I mean, Missouri's had some injury problems with Brady Cook. Yeah. Luther Burden hasn't really looked like himself. So, how good is this Alabama win, really?
I'd say it's a good win. It's not as good as their Georgia win by any means. But it definitely gets Bama back on the right path. But that Bama-LSU matchup is going to be so big now. It's loser goes home now because they both have 2 losses. And it's just going to be a big brand battle with 2 great football teams in a couple weeks. And I'm very looking forward to that one. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really good for their resume. Obviously, it's a good SEC win, but Missouri's nothing special. The big thing is that you're able to get that, big win, the confidence booster for the team as they head into these big showdowns at the end of the year. Their schedule isn't easy. No SEC schedule is easy. And Kalen DeBoer and this team, they can't lose another game. Like you said, they're not making the playoffs if they do.
No.
Keeping in the SEC, Texas beat Vanderbilt. I believe it was 27-24.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt covered that hefty spread.
Yeah. So Vanderbilt was my Superdog pick last week. I was pretty confident about it. Probably should have made it my confidence, but whatever. We're good. Vanderbilt, they got Diego Pavia as their quarterback. He's been playing pretty good. He's been making the right decisions a lot, which is keeping Vanderbilt in a lot of these games. I really don't think Texas is to look good, like, in the past couple weeks at all. And a lot of people are surprised. I'm not that surprised because, like, they didn't play anyone earlier in the season. I get Michigan was ranked in the top 10 at the time, but, like, they were never good. So it's just like Texas, I think they got to get a big win. They're going to make the playoff, but, like, if I could see them doing anything, they're going to need to get some sort of a decent win for me to think that they have a chance of making a run.
I don't know. The SEC is just so deep now.
So pretty much this is how it works, right? So the SEC, if their good teams win, they're all insane. But if a bad team in the SEC beats a good team, then now the bad teams are good. So the college sports people just pick the SEC to be good at the beginning of the year. And even if they lose to a conference like ACC and non-conference games, they're still going to think they're better. It's kind of rigged, but whatever. The SEC is the best football conference, definitely. I'll admit that.
Vanderbilt's not a bad team.
No, Vanderbilt's good. Vanderbilt's a good team.
Vanderbilt, they play this.
If Texas is top 5, they shouldn't be only beating them by 3.
Yeah, but Vanderbilt plays this really weird style of football. This is what they brought over from New Mexico State last year with Diego Pavia. They will wind down as much clock they can off the game clock, all 40 seconds. They love time of possession, and they make you pay if you can't score on your possessions. That's why the games are so close. If they do get down early, though, it is trouble for the Vanderbilt squad.
So kind of like Army, I guess.
We haven't seen Army get down yet.
I guess.
Let's move on to LSU at A&M, and I know you had a strong take on that game. What'd you see?
So I think this was like the biggest, most monumental game of the week because LSU was dominating that game early on. They were up by I think 14 or something, but they should have even been up by more. They had their field goal kicking game was terrible. The snapper, the holder, the kicker, everything was off. Maybe it's because of the hostile environment at A&M, but at the same time, A&M wasn't doing nothing on offense until they brought in Marcel Reed, and that's when things really changed. And if they had been starting Marcel Reed all season, I think they're undefeated right now, but they're still in a great position to make the college football playoff, and they control their own destiny to make the SEC championship in a stacked conference. So
yeah, who thought A&M would be on top of the SEC heading into November? Definitely not me. Yeah, not me either. And the final game we're going to recap from Week 9 of college football. SMU at Duke, the big ACC matchup, and SMU won. Controversial ending. They won 28-27 in overtime.
That game was so stupid. I was watching it the whole time, and I was really rooting for Duke to win for Clemson's sake, but it was – I think SMU had 7 or 6 turnovers, and Duke had none, and SEC won somehow. And it was the same thing with LSU had going with Duke. They couldn't make a field goal to save their life. There was blocks, missed kicks, and somehow, some way, SMU survives when the quarterback had 6 turnovers. Such a bloodbath type of game right there. That's like your classic Big Ten battle we had in the ACC on Saturday night.
Yeah, so I'll get to SMU in one moment. So we're going to go over one big thing we saw from Week 9, one team that really stood out to us with their victory, and I like SMU. So SMU, obviously their win was a little controversial, but the difference is right now they control their destiny if they want to make the college football playoffs. And a lot of ACC fans were complaining about how SMU is now in the conference, but SMU is beating their own breed here. SMU is beating these ACC teams. So I don't know what the complaints are about that. And at the end of the day, SMU, their last 3 games are very, very weak teams. They play Pitt this week, and that's the big one. It's monumental because both teams are undefeated in the ACC. If SMU beats Pitt and they win out, they're in the ACC conference game, championship game. They win that game, they're in the playoffs. What team stood out to you?
So A&M stood out to me, of course, because that quarterback change, and it was just probably the biggest turnaround I've seen this year in college football that resulted in a win. Overall, it was definitely Georgia in that Bama game, but they didn't end up coming out on top. So it was definitely the biggest turnaround this year, I think, because it was such a big game. It's Saturday night. But I'm going to go on a quick rant about something else real quick before we move on to the next thing. So for me as a Clemson fan, it's kind of annoying because we could very well finish the year with one loss in the ACC because 4 out of our last 5 games are really tough matchups against the ACC's best opponents on the road in most of them. And then we play South Carolina, who's a good team from the SEC, while SMU literally plays nobody. So if we lose one game, we drop one game, which is pretty much our only loss except for Georgia in the first game of the season, we're probably going to be out of the playoffs, which is just like pretty stupid in my opinion. But still, we still control our own destiny if we win out. So I can't be complaining too much.
All right, that's going to do it for our recaps. We're going to move it on to our Week 10 spreads. Last week I was able to gain 1 point on Lucas. Didn't get my confidence again. I'll start it off with my first pick. We're going to take Auburn. I tend to take them every week. But we're going to take them at home against Vanderbilt. The line's 8, so we might need to, lines are subject to change. We change based on what it closes at. So we change our picks before Saturday. But for now, we're going to keep Auburn on the slate because they really looked good against Kentucky. We gave the ball to Jarquez Hunter, showed why he's the best running back in the SEC. 280 rushing yards. Feed him the ball. And this is a revenge game. Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, the coaching staff was at New Mexico State last year when they came to Auburn and beat them. Now we get to host them. Star linebacker Eugene Asante said it is a revenge game. And that's what we're going to show. The only issue is Vanderbilt. We know their offense. We might not get as many possessions to go up 2 scores against a Vanderbilt team.
Okay, so for my first spread pick, I have Stanford, which I don't think they're a good football team, but they have 10 points against NC State, who I think is also not a good football team. So it's 2 bad football teams going at it, and when that happens, usually what ends up is a closer game. So I don't really get why they're getting 10 points here. So for now, like Brody said, we usually change our picks a lot before Saturday, but for now, I'm going to have Stanford on my slate.
We're going to keep it in the 12 o'clock window. We're going to take Minnesota. They're favored by 3 on the road to Illinois. Minnesota had a perfect October. Darius Keller's got the offense humming. Brosmer threw the ball 4 touchdowns, I believe. Maybe it was 3 last game. Minnesota is looking good, and they're sharpening up heading into November against an Illinois team that's on the decline.
Yeah. So my next pick is I have Virginia Tech. I have them -3. I really like Virginia Tech because they have a high-powered offense. They should have beat Miami a couple weeks ago. And I think Kyron Drones, I think he's the real deal at quarterback. He's a great player. He'll find the right guy. He's an accurate passer, can throw the deep ball. And I think Virginia Tech's going to be a great team. And they're going to be a very tough challenge for Clemson in a few weeks on the road with Enter Sandman. So that will always get the fans going crazy.
And I like Kyron Drones, but they've had a tough start to the year. I'm going to take Texas Tech, especially if they continue to get under 14 points, 13.5 on the road to Iowa State. I think Iowa State's a good football team. They should be 11th. They're undefeated, and they're a Power 4 team. And Iowa State, they're going to win the game. But Texas Tech, Taj Brooks, feed him the ball on the road. They're going to be hungry to play this game against Iowa State because they're in contention for the Big 12 title race. And what's better than beating the team that's leading the title race in Iowa State?
Yeah, big game there. So for my next pick, kind of a different route than the normal for me. I usually pick a lot of bigger games, but I'm going to go to the American Conference here where we have Memphis playing UTSA. And I think Memphis, again, another high-powered offense, they're just going to score a lot of points. Their defense isn't the best. I think they'll score enough points to cover the 7-point spread against UTSA. So I have them here as one of my picks.
Yeah, they're a high-powered offense. And, Lucas, how good is Florida State this year?
Pretty darn terrible.
So North Carolina, they're only favored by 2.5 right now heading on the road at Florida State, especially if DJ Uliagale, do you have an injury status on that?
They just benched him. They benched him too.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah,
they're on like their 4th-string quarterback. So the funny thing is, my next pick, North Carolina.
I got North Carolina too. Or Marion Hampton.
Yeah, exactly.
They're getting the job done.
Like that. He's him.
Yeah.
Ashton Genty of the ACC.
Don't overthink it. He's been a good running back in the ACC for his 2 years he's been there. And then we're going to move over to 8 p.m. There are no games later than 8 p.m. this week. I just looked, right?
That's pretty crazy.
Actually, Fresno and Hawaii might play later than.
Classical.
Nope, they play at 7. The latest game is 8 p.m. this week.
That's pretty
Colorado
crazy.
State heads to Nevada, and we're going to take Nevada plus 2.5 at home. They have a good rushing attack. I watched their game against Fresno State a few weeks ago. Savion Red, he's a good runner. Their passing game's not there, but Colorado State did lose Trey Horton, I think, 2 weeks ago. Fowler Nicolosi has had a subpar season, and Nevada's getting points at home. That's going to be a fired-up environment in Reno for that game, so we're going to take Nevada plus 2.5.
My next pick, I have Clemson, which this is somewhat of a controversial take because since that Georgia game, they haven't really played any high-caliber team, and Louisville's a pretty good team. They've taken a lot of good opponents like Notre Dame and Miami, very close where they could have easily won those games. But Clemson's at home. They play way better when at home. But the one thing that could go wrong here is Cade Klubnik is known to not show up in his big games. He's probably played like 3 or 4 of them now. I think they've lost every one of them. So I'm going to try to be like Kirk Herbstreit here and give a quick analysis of him. So pretty much, if he has a clean pocket, he's one of the better quarterbacks because he has the option to scramble out right, scramble out left. He's very mobile. But when he has a clean pocket, he's also very capable of hitting the deep ball to some of our speedy receivers. But I do think if Louisville can get some pressure on him and they're scoring points on offense, the game could get ugly for Clemson, which is why I might end up changing this pick. But for now, I'm going to have Clemson winning. And they're going to cover a 10-point spread.
So that's going to do it for our 5 spread picks. I just want to take a moment to take a quick look at the Hoop and Helmets YouTube page down in the description below. Lucas is posting some nice shorts on there. He posted his AP poll reaction the other day. You're going to post another one of those this week, right? Yeah, and I posted about Sunbelt. Didn't do that well. But so we're going to move to the confidence picks. There's no other way to avoid this. I haven't been good with my confidence picks this year.
Yeah.
But we're going to change it up, and we're going to go with another Power 4 team at home, favored by a lot of points. Tennessee. They're back off their bye week. Kentucky's going to travel to Tennessee. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kentucky's played some close games against Power 4 teams, but they're burnt down. Douglas Hunter ran all over them. And who's coming? The second best back in the SEC. Dylan Sampson's coming to town. Nico Ayamiaba, this is a big game for Josh Heupel's crew to get right. And 17.5. Don't be surprised if they're winning this game 40-10.
Well, all right. Okay. I think it's like a decent pick. I could definitely see it happening. I see where you're coming from there. But for my confidence, I have Pitt. And Pitt's in a big matchup against SMU. 2 undefeated ACC teams. Maybe I'm picking Pitt because I really want them to win for Clemson's sake. But they're underdogs by 8 points. They've been playing great this year. They've come out on top on a lot of close ones. They're good. They're good in like the margins. So I think if SMU's been struggling a bit lately, I know they've won their games. But I do think Pitt, maybe they don't win, but I think they'll keep it real close, maybe like a field goal game. That's why I have them covering the 8-point spread for my confidence as of now.
I think SMU's going to win that game. But Eli Holstein has looked good for a freshman. Super Dogs. Last week I lost my Super Dog. Did you win yours?
Nope, lost.
So we both went over.
Oh, wait, no, I won my Super Dog last week. I had Vanderbilt. I lost my confidence.
Yes, good. So this is a bounce back week for me. And this is kind of an interesting. I picked against Houston a few times this year. We're going to take them at home against Kansas State. They're dogs by 13 points. And Houston was projected to be one of the worst teams in Division I, but yet they found a way to play teams very, very close. Kansas State, they haven't been able to pull out. They haven't been able to score on teams. They've been pulling out games at the finest margins. Houston has nothing to lose, so we're going to take them at home. Dogs by 13 points.
Okay, so for my Super Dog, it's pretty interesting because a couple seconds ago, I had Kentucky plus 18. But after hearing Brody's great analysis on Tennessee, I decided to change it. I'm going to go Friday night action here. I'm picking San Diego State to cover the spread against Boise. They have 25 points that with room for error. I think they'll definitely get that done. I mean, they almost beat Washington State last week, and Washington State's in the top 25. I don't see why they can't cover it.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for our spreads, confidence, Super Dog picks. Good luck with everybody's picks this week. And Now we're going to preview a few big games, and we're going to start off right away with the banger, Ohio State at Penn State, a top 4 matchup. Ohio State's favored by 3 as they come to Happy Valley, and who do you like here?
First off, I'm very frustrated that this game is at 12 because I haven't really been able to watch any 12 o'clock games all year, and they put the best matchup at 12, which is just kind of stupid in my opinion. But all right, I'll get to my prediction here. It's gonna be a great matchup in an electric atmosphere at Happy Valley. Wish it was at night; it would have been better. But Penn State, obviously, they're still gonna have all the fans here. They're still gonna be going crazy. But Ohio State. Now, they're down in the dumps right now. They got 1 loss. They have Indiana on the schedule. They can't really lose too much anymore. 1 loss, that's a lot of losses for college football, different than college basketball. So I think Ohio State's going to come into Happy Valley with a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to get it done. Ryan Day isn't known for winning the big games, but guess who's also not known for winning the big games? James Franklin. I think Ryan Day is going to come up top in this one.
Yeah, Ohio State's definitely going to be fired up for this game, but if you remember earlier this year when I sent you my college football predictions, who did I have out of the college football playoff? Ohio State. So, James Franklin, this is a game I've had pinpointed on the calendar. If Penn State wants to make the playoffs, now they should make it no matter what. But if they want to knock out their rival, and if they want the big resume-boosting win over Ohio State, this is the game. This is the James Franklin game. The student section should be electric in Happy Valley as they're 7-0.
All right, so next we got Oregon versus Michigan. Oregon, they've been playing great recently. They're traveling to Michigan. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge for them because Michigan's not looked good at all this year. But Michigan's a weird team. They could maybe keep this game close technically if they just somehow run. If they get the running game going, they could because they could just waste a lot of clock. So I could see them possibly covering the spread. But, they're just not going to beat Oregon. Oregon's a way better football team than them, so Oregon will come out on top.
Now, Oregon's winning this game. I don't see any trouble with Michigan. Michigan might keep it close. Their quarterback problem. Oregon's going to win the football game. They're going to win it by double digits. Let's move it to the night. Pitt traveling to play SMU. We know you have Pitt as your
I know my confidence.
But who do you like there?
So I'm very back and forth. I think SMU and Pitt are very different styles of teams, but they're even in their overall skill level. But I think SMU will probably get it done because they're at home. But I'm rooting really heavily for Pitt. So this is really hard for me to pick this game. SMU, you know what? I'm going to pick SMU to bounce back, and I hope Pitt proves me wrong. I hope I'm wrong about this pick. But SMU is going to bounce back, in my opinion. I think the coach even said in the interview that they're very lucky they won that game, and they're going to have all the athletes prepared for next weekend in a huge game against Pitt.
SMU is winning it. You don't need to go into more detail. They're winning the game, and they're making the college football.
It'll be funny if Pitt wins.
You heard it now.
We'll see. All right, so we got A&M versus South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium at night. They're going to have the sandstorm going, waving all the towels. It's going to be pretty lit. But Texas A&M coming off a huge win. This game reminds me a lot of that LSU versus Arkansas game earlier in the year. I think Arkansas and South Carolina are very comparable teams. And LSU got it done at Arkansas after after LSU came off a big win against Ole Miss. This time it's LSU on the losing side with Texas A&M coming off the big win. Marcel Reed, he's going into a tough environment on the road. Last week was at home. That could be a difference maker. I want to pick South Carolina. I'm going to go with A&M, but I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, we tend to see these matchups every week in the SEC now, don't you think?
Yeah, that is true.
I like South Carolina at home.
Yeah,
that
would be fun. I want South Carolina to win.
And then the so-called primetime game of the week, Louisville travels to Clemson. I'll say my pick first because I have a little surprise here, but I like Louisville against Clemson. Tyler Show, Ja'Cory Brooks. They've been waiting for this primetime game, and they've been disappointing in the ACC this far. And this is the big game they could prove themselves. They can knock off this Clemson team that if Clemson loses this game, they could have trouble with 2 losses and especially not going to be able to make the college football playoff. Lucas, I think I know where you're going, but who do you like here?
Give me Phil Maffa and the Clemson Tigers.
First big test is Georgia. Kate Klubnik coming in hot, sling the ball downfield. Wesco 75 yards. First play of the game. We're gonna come out hot. Louisville, they're not gonna be able to stop us. We're gonna win this one by a good 20 points. Move on to next week. Ranked in the top 10. Come on now. They should have never taken us out of the top 10 in the first place.
Yeah, bold pick, but that was kind of expected there from you. If Clemson loses, it'd be kind of fun. So let's move it over to the other main college sport, college basketball. We know the season kicks off on Monday. I'm fired up for this season. Football's kind of worn me out, especially since Auburn hasn't been great. So there's really only a few teams that have emerged as really that top caliber. You know, with the era of the portal now, teams can get deeper and a lot of new looks. I think there's like 2,000 plus guys that transferred to the 362 D1 college basketball teams. Correct me if I'm wrong, but started off with a title pick. Do you have a title pick, Lucas?
Right now I do. So if I were to be smart, I would pick UConn because you can't. They've won the last 2 years. Dan Hurley's just built an insane program over there and an insane culture. They've been winning with ease in the Big East, which is a really tough conference in my opinion, which they've actually done way better against other opponents, and they've taken a decent amount of losses in the Big East, which proves that they're a great conference. So I would pick them, but that's a boring pick, and I'm not boring, so I'm going to go with Bama, which you could also say is a boring pick. But they haven't really been good in the last couple of years until that Final Four run as a 6th seed, and they're returning a lot of players. Mark Sears is insane. Grant Nelson's really good. They got a great guy in Chris Youngblood from South Florida, and I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. But those Bama versus Auburn matches will be interesting to see, and I know Brody is going to be excited for those games.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Alabama, if we want to go into detail on them, they got Aiden Holloway. I'm going to be watching his.
Oh, yeah.
He was a terrible shooter for us last year after he was a highly touted recruit coming out of high
Kind
school.
of like Elliot Cadeau.
Yeah, Elliot Cadeau is a different story. But Alabama, they're gonna be top 5 the whole year, I think. But then they're gonna come into Neville in February, and Auburn's gonna show them what's up. My pick for the college basketball national championship, you landed right on the spot. Those 2 teams combined with Kansas, you've got your 3 favorites. It's not boring if you pick the winner in November. That the winner's gonna win in March. But we're gonna pick Kansas. Their problem last year was depth, and they still were able to succeed. Now, look at their roster. If you look at it top to bottom, the best team on paper there is in the country. Yeah. Bill Self, you look at his last 20 years, he's been the best coach in college basketball, and nobody can convince me otherwise. They've had, I think, 13 number 1 seeds. It's absolutely ridiculous. Zeke Mayo, believe it or not, I watched some South Dakota State games last year, and he was really good. Rylan Griffin, we know how much of a star he was at Alabama. Then you combine those guys, especially the A.J. Stewart, you combine them with Hunter Dickinson, of course, K.J. Adams, Deshaun Harris.
Let me give you my quick take on this one. They're easily the best team on paper. They have so many star players. But the reason I'm not picking them to win is because I'm a big believer in chemistry. Maybe they'll get it going. If they do, they're probably going to win it all. But I just can't really see that happening. They have way too many superstars. I think they have 5 or 6 superstars on their team. We've seen many March Madness runs are all about getting hot at the right time and having good chemistry. We saw that with Clemson and Bama last year. And I just don't think Kansas is going to be that type of team this year. I could definitely be wrong. We haven't even watched a single game yet. So I'm not too sure about this, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, but Hunter Dickinson, he's a veteran in the locker room. He
knows. I don't know if he's the most vocal guy, though.
Okay, but
he's not as good as Colt Brenner.
Yes, he'll figure out how to win in March. Sleepers. Who do you like as your sleeper?
So I got 2 teams from my favorite 2 conferences, Miami and St. John's. First, I'm going to go over Miami. Miami was really bad last year, and they were very highly rated going into the year too. But for some reason, I feel like this is just the year of Miami sports because football hasn't been good for them either, and they're usually always the overrated team. But this year, they're having a great football year, and I think they're going to continue that magic into the basketball season, like we saw with a couple teams like Bama last year having great seasons for both. And I think Miami, they're returning Nigel Pack and Matthew Cleveland, two 15-point scorers. They got Jalen Blackman from Stenson, which is I guarantee you don't know what Stenson is, most of you. But he was averaging the most points, I think, in D1 last year.
Yeah,
so that's going to be a big pickup. They also got a couple 5-stars coming in, and they have one other star player on their team. For some reason, I can't think of him off the top of my head, but their roster is stacked. And if they can get that chemistry going, and they have a good amount of pieces from guards to center, so I think they're definitely one. Do you want to say one of yours?
Yeah, so I'll keep it in that realm, I guess, is like equivalent to Miami. Indiana, you get Ballo.
Oh, yeah.
You get a few good recruits.
Miles
Rice.
Rice.
Miles Rice. They got this other guy I was just looking at. Kanan Carlisle, a sophomore from Indiana. And Ballo, he's obviously not going to be there, like, production-wise, but this is a wide-open Big Ten conference.
Yeah.
And I can see Indiana as maybe like a 7 seed and then making a run in the tournament. Like,
I agree.
these are veterans.
I agree.
But they have good guards. So if they get hot in March, you could be looking at an Elite Eight team.
So you know what I was about to say there? I was about to say this team that I have next could be a 7 seed and be a sleeper that goes all the way to the Final Four. I have St. John's. So St. John's, last year, I was so mad when they got left out of the tournament. They were a top 5 team in the country. They were in the last 10 games. They were 9-1, and their only loss was to UConn, like 95-92, and they ended up dominating everyone. It's a disgrace that they didn't make the tournament last year, and they're returning a lot of key pieces, including their center Zuby Ejiofor, who improved a lot. They're returning their backup guard last year, Wilkins. He was a great player, and they got 2 key transfers. Kadari Richmond, Mr. Triple-Double himself. He's insane. He gets rebounds, assists, points. He does it all. And then they got Devion Smith from Utah, who's a bit of a sleeper player himself. He averaged like 14 last year and is a great playmaker. Those two, if they can get it going together, it's gonna be a duo to watch for sure.
A lot of talent on one team. It sounds like a team I was just talking about.
Kansas?
Yeah.
Not as good.
Let's move over to mid-majors. And this year, before we talk about our mid-majors, I feel like a mid-major can make a deep run in the tournament. Or maybe not make a deep run, but in the regular season be ranked highly.
Yeah.
Because there's just like a few that I'm thinking about on the top of my head. Obviously, you have Princeton, McNeese. McNeese should have won their tournament game against Kansas last year. That blocked shot, that was a bad call, I think.
No, that was Stanford.
Oh, Stanford. McNeese played Gonzaga. I remember Gonzaga ruled them. But I like High Point just as a mid-major. They're one of the top favorites.
I agree.
Before I talk about High Point, I just want to make this clear because I have a hot take. Tyon Grant Foster. If you know, the small forward on
certified dog on Grand
Canyon. Yeah, Grand Canyon. He is legitimately an All-American contender. And I know people might think that's crazy considering he plays on Grand Canyon, but he averaged, I think, 22 points per game. He was a transfer from DePaul a few years prior. He's in the tournament game against Alabama. He went off. But We've seen him go off against these teams. Now, Grand Canyon, they have the platform to succeed. Tyon Grant Foster's senior year, and I could see him in the All-American. Meanwhile, High Point, last year they won 30 games. I think they only had like 2 losses or something.
Yeah.
They have a great duo, Kazan Gifa and Kimani Hamilton. They both average around 16 points per game. You return some of your starters alongside your duo, and you don't play such a strong schedule. And this is what I mean. Maybe not a deep tournament run because we don't know what seed they're going to get, but a high regular season ranked team.
Yeah. So the obvious pick here is definitely Grand Canyon because they got Tyon Grant Foster and a bunch of other returning pieces to their run. They made a run to the round of 32 last year, but then Jaron McCain just went absolutely nuclear on them. But
They lost to Bama.
They lost to Bama. Oh yeah. My bad. That was James Madison I was thinking of. But that's weird that I was going to say this because I think I got confused because my 2 other teams that I could see doing better this year, they both made the tournament last year, and that's McNeese and James Madison. I'm heavy on McNeese because everyone has them way lower now after that blowout to Gonzaga, but they're returning a lot of guys, and they've even added more pieces to their roster under Will Wade. And I think they're going to be way more experienced heading into the tournament next year. So I think they're going to be my team as of now that's most likely to make a run. But I really like Princeton too, as they're getting back Xavier Lee, another electric player.
Yeah, Will Wade, we know he's a good coach at LSU, but then, things happen, allegations.
Yeah.
SEC, I don't have a strong take because that's where Auburn's in, and I don't want to be super biased. But I know you know a lot about the SEC this year, right?
So pretty much
What do you like?
I mean, I wouldn't say I know more about the SEC than the ACC and Big East, but I do like this Texas A&M team a lot. They're always a great offensive rebounding team, and they're returning Wade Taylor the fourth, which he's kind of a 3-point chucker, I'm not gonna lie, but he does make a lot of them. He loves getting to the line, so I think if they get their strings going, they're getting rebounds, Wade Taylor's making shots, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the SEC.
Yeah, I think the SEC is going to be one of those top conferences.
Yeah.
I might think otherwise.
I think
AP poll theory over here.
I think they're still good.
Okay.
I just think they're overrated.
Okay. Let's move it over to the players. The Wooden Award's obviously the big one. The favorite right now, I think it's Cooper Flagg. I think he's tied with Hunter Dickinson. I might be wrong.
I'm an ACC guy, but that doesn't make sense.
But who do you like in the Wooden Award? I mean, personally, I like Mark Sears to win the Wooden Award in the SEC. I know what he can do.
Yes.
He's terrorized me many times.
Yep.
He's a guy that can make 5 threes and on the same night get 8 assists. He's going to be that leader on that Bama squad that has a lot of young big men. Grant Nelson too. That's a lob threat. But he's my pick for the Wooden Award.
I hate Mark Sears so much. He should have won and made the Final Four if he didn't make 7 threes in a row.
It's okay.
But I'd say Mark Sears definitely up there. Well, we got a couple of big men. I feel like the big men usually win, like Zach Edey. I remember Luka Garza won it a couple of years ago. I think this is going to be the year of the guards. But for now, I'm going to just say a couple big men that I like because the trend of the big men has kept going up, winning the Wooden Award. And so Brody's going to be happy about this one. Janai Broom, he's definitely one of the guys. Ryan Kalkbrenner, I like saying his last name. I don't know why. And then Hunter Dickinson of Kansas is another guy. I'd honestly say as of now, Dickinson's probably the favorite out of those 3 guys. And then you can add Cooper Flagg in there too. So it could most definitely be a big man winning this year. I just think they're going to change it up and give it to a guy like Mark Sears.
Yeah, it's going to be points per game.
Yeah.
But just to wrap this show up, so day 1 of the college basketball season this Monday. And there are a few, we know there's all those tournaments. We'll talk about the tournaments next week because there aren't that many in the first week. But there's all these showcases different teams are hosting. They have the new Players Era tournament that we all know about. But week 1, the auto tip-off, and I remember Auburn played Baylor in a tip-off game last year. Baylor heads to Gonzaga. Do you have a pick in that game?
So right now I'm more focused on college football, but I do know their rosters pretty well, and I think Gonzaga will win as of now. Gonzaga has a lot of experience in these early non-conference matchups as they do it every year because their strength of schedule is weak in their conference. And I think Gonzaga will get off to a strong start. They're returning literally everyone. Graham Ike, Ryan Nembhard, Andrew Nembhard's brother. I think they'll get it done, but it should be a high-scoring battle.
Yeah, Graham Ike is the real deal. And that's going to wrap it up for our show. I'm Brody Jacobson, Lucas DeVries. Subscribe in the comments. We'll see you next time.
Make sure to check our channel for more videos.
Hoop and Helmets. It's fine, we can cut this out, but